Good morning to all of you. Today I am here to present about my presentation, which is based on comparative study on physiochemical, microbiological and organoleptic properties of local and imported dried fish in Sri Lanka. Let's move to the brief introduction of what is dried fish industry in Sri Lanka. All you know, Sri Lanka is a middle income country as well as it is island which is surrounded by the sea. Therefore, marine fishery plays a vital role in country's social and economic lives. Next, move to the fishery sector in Sri Lanka. It is very important because it's have ability to fulfill the nutrient requirements of the living being in Sri Lanka. But due to the perishability of the fresh fish, it's very important media, good media for the growth and development of the microorganisms. Therefore, the preservation of the but application of the preservation method is essential in order to provide the best quality food product to ensure the nutrient security and also safe to consumption. When we apply the preservation methods for the fresh fish, we must pay attention for the biological properties, chemical properties, physical properties, and sensory properties of dried fish. Next, move to the very important part of my research is results and discussion. The main objective of my research is nutrient analysis of dried fish. The major component of my research is the nutrient analysis and proximate composition. According to the proximate composition, moisture content, total mineral content, crude protein content, and crude fat content is the major four parameters which is belong to the crude proximate composition. So here you can see there are 9 different types of dried fish that I used to test these parameters. Here you can see the moisture content. The local mora dried fish contain in the highest wet basis moisture content when I measure the moisture content. So when I measure these parameter, the important observations that I observed is the almost all tested dried fish are varied beyond the SLA standard in point of the moisture content when we measure the moisture content. Here you can see the local mackerel dried fish contain in the highest total mineral content, while the crude protein, the important parameter, crude fat protein content, the skipjack tuna contain in the highest crude protein content. When consider the crude fat content, the fish or dried fish is a not good source of the crude fat. It contains a little amount of crude fat, but when compared to the other dried fish, tested dried fish, both mackerel dried fish contain the somewhat higher crude fat content. In addition to proximate compression, total salt content, pH content, peroxide value, and histamine content also tested by using the same types of dried fish. Here you can see the both shark dried fish containing the higher amount of total salt content. It may be due to the application of the higher salt when the processing of the preservation. You can see the total the local mackerel contain higher pH, while imported skipjack tuna containing the lowest pH. When consider the peroxide value, it's a very important, can be used to measure the shelf life of the any kind of foodstuff. So here I used to measure the shelf life and to get some idea of the shelf life of the tested dried fish. Here you can see it's contained a small amount of peroxide, so it's in that point of view it's safe to consumption. That the very important parameter that I measure toward my research is histamine content. Histidine is a naturally occurring biogenic amine which can see in the dried fish, but due to the decarboxylation of the histidine, it's lead to produce the histamine. But there is a margin that we can see that can histamine can be appeared in dried fish is 200 milligram per kilogram. Beyond that level, it can be a problem for the human health. But you can see local shark or imported shark, they do not contain the histamine. So due to the when consider the next mode of the biological analysis, fungus identification. So I use the morphological characteristics of the colony and I identify the what is the fungus. So Saccharomyces, Aspergillus, and the Penicillium is the most common fungus species that I observe in my tested dried fish. In addition to that, Basidium species I also observe, but it's not common. Next, move to the physiochemical parameters. I use them by using the manually and also sensory evaluation. So here you can see these are the dried fish which we can see in day-to-day life. When consider the color, it's almost all tested dried fish are varied in the shades of the brown color, and texture most of them are firm and flexible. Some are fragile, but all you can know, all you know, there is no good odor in the dried fish, but mackerel dried fish and the local mackerel and the balea or skipjack tuna both dried fish contain the good characteristic odor compared to the other tested dried fish. Here you can see the sensory results that I get from the sensory evaluation, and also the most important observation is there is no significant difference between the skipjack tuna dried fish or sensory evaluation of the mackerel dried fish or shark dried fish. So in that point of view, there is no difference in sensory point of view. So these are the conclusions that I made by using the research results. So previously I said that almost all tested dried fish are exceed the cell standard in moisture content and the good fat content. Both skipjack tuna contain the highest crude protein content and crude fat content. According to the literature review, it's varied from 0 to 25, so it's somewhat higher range. And salt content 12 to 20 is the cell standard of the salt content that can be appeared in the dried fish. So all tested dried fish are varied from 5 to 20. It means they are varied in standard level. The histamine content, previously said that I previously said the 200 milligram per kilogram is the highest histamine content that can be appear in the dried fish, but according to my results, 127 milligram per kilogram in the highest histamine content that I observed. Therefore, it's safe to consumption. So according to the literature review, 2.9 to 25 millicube per kilogram is the range of the dried fish, peroxide value of the dried fish. So all tested dried fish are varied this range. And Aspergillus species, Saccharomyces species, Penicillium are the most common fungal species that I observed in dried fish in my tested dried fish. So there is no significant difference. There was no significant difference in the sensory evaluation between the shark dried fish or skipjack tuna dried fish or mackerel dried fish. And this is the references that I used to build up my presentation. Thank you for your attention.